Okay, welcome back. We're talking about the top 5 mistakes. We finished talking about don't leave it out in the open where anyone could just wander through and touch the server. If they can touch the server, it ain't your server no more. It's theirs. So don't leave it on a desk, basically. And so one of the things you might do if you use just a traditional machine sitting on a desk someplace, you're probably going to forget to inventory it as one of your servers. That's a possibility. So, label it and make sure it's in the inventory. Okay, next you talk about reliability on page 249. So you're going to have redundancy on lots of parts, but mostly those parts that move. So moving parts, the fans have the moving part. The power supplies have moving parts, generally another fan. Spinning discs. I'll admit an awful lot of you guys are probably getting away from the traditional spinning disc. But anything that moves is going to have a reliability issue. So you might think, well, how reliable are these drives? Well, there's a really cool company called Backblaze. Now, this is a company who's basically it's like a cloud service thing. But because they buy a bunch of hard drives, they actually started collecting statistics on their failure rates. And it's fascinating to read their articles. It's kind of strange. So here's a little chart here that basically this is the annualized failure rate. And so the difference between a this model Hitachi 8 terabyte drive and this model Hitachi, I can't even say that, is the difference between 0.6 annualized failure rate to 8 point something. And they're both 8 terabyte drives. Like, wow. Okay, so let's not pick on Hitachi. Let's go look at Seagate. Does Seagate have consistency? Well, not really. Toshiba? Well, not really. Western Digital? Well, they seem to kind of sort of do. So here's an interesting thing. One is there's no real way to predict when you buy a brand new drive what its reliability is going to be. You can kind of sort of look at this and tell that the annualized failure rate is just all over the place. There's not one manufacturer that's better. There's not one model that's better. It's all just a hodgepodge of stuff. And here's one of the most fascinating things they discovered that I would have sworn that this was not true, but I believe them, that there's no correlation between how hard a hard drive is being used and its lifespan. In other words, it could be used just a little bit over here, like, just a couple things popping through the day, versus another one that gets hammered 24/7. There apparently is no correlation whatsoever between how hard the hard drive is being used and when it's going to fail. I find that fascinating. Okay, they talk about the level of redundancy. So let's say that I need 4 fans in my machine. So I could have an N+1 redundancy, right? Which means I could have 5 fans, and that way I could tolerate 1 fan failing, right? Okay. You could have an N+2 where you could tolerate 2 fans that fail. So, this N+1, N+2 is just a way of describing how much of the requirement is being doubled up. Okay, so data integrity. We talk about the RAID scenario. So we are going to talk about RAID a lot in some other chapters. So again, I'm just going to, gloss over. So different RAID scenarios. So RAID it's 2 different terms for RAID. It started out being a redundant array of inexpensive disks, and then it's now changed to redundant array of independent disks. But anyway, so a RAID 1 provides me very, very high reliability. It provides me an N+1. I have a requirement for 1 drive for my C drive, but I have 2. So I have double the requirement. Okay? Make sense? Okay. But for the rest of my file system, perhaps where, file and print sharing and email and web and all the rest of that stuff is installed, I'm going to use a RAID 5, which means if I need 10 disks, I'm only going to have an N+1, which means if I need 10 disks, I'm going to install 11. So once again, if one of them failed, I'm okay. Now, if 2 of them failed, I'm not okay. All right, so N+1. So yeah, we are going to talk about that. So RAID basically just mirrors things and spreads them out so that they can have this super duper reliability. If a drive failed in a 2-disc RAID 1, if a drive failed, you probably won't even know. I mean, there'll be probably a blinking light on the monitor, on your security monitor or your server monitor saying, hey man, we're running on 1 disk now. But the performance, you probably won't notice. If a RAID 5, one of the disks flops out, again, it'll slow the system down a tiny bit, not much. And then you'll say, hey man, you need to swap out drive. So, you find that offending drive, pull it out, put a replacement in, and it rebuilds. By the way, rebuilding takes a really, really long time. I have a 70 terabyte scenario in a RAID 5. And if you replace a drive and say, okay, go back and fix this, it's going to take, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours to do. Now, your machine's running during this time, but it's just running in a degraded mode. And then when the 3 or 4 hours are up, then you're back to super duper mode. Okay. So, RAID is not a backup system. I mean, sure, it makes things have high integrity for failure, but that's not what backup is for. In the real world, typically in corporate America, the reason why you restore something off of a backup isn't because you had a hardware failure. It's because someone said, hey man, I accidentally deleted this file. Could you get it back for me? You go, okay, sure. Well, in a RAID scenario, if you delete the file, it's going to delete it off of all the drives, right? So that's not backup. Backup is completely different. Okay, good. All right. So there could be a non-RAID scenario. If you have enough, remember we talked about how you have like cluster computers and have different grids. You could spread data between the host and, not between individual drives. Or you can combine the two. You could have, a RAID kind of scenario on 2 different hosts. You have a RAID 5 over here and a RAID 5 over here. Then you replicate across. I mean, that'd be like super duper redundancy, right? I could have a single drive failure when nobody cares. And I have a whole thing replicated. That'd be kind of cool. Okay, hot swappable parts. RAID drives, for example, that are designed so that I don't have to power the system down to pull a hard drive out. I can do it while it's live. And then take a brand new hard drive and stick it in and pop it in and presto changeo without shutting the system down, and it'll do its thing. Okay, so what about, like a network card, a physical network card? I mean, can I do that? Can I crack open my server case and plug in a brand new network card without powering it down? No, please don't try that. If you're plugging a PCIe card in something, no, can't do it. So my machine at home, I actually have configured one of my SATA connectors to be hot swappable. So I have one SATA connection that points, I have an NVMe drive. I have a SATA connection going to an SSD. And then I have another SATA connection that goes to just this empty container where you could put in hard drives, a hard drive slot. And so that one, I tell it to be hot swappable. So without shutting my system down, I could take a brand new hard drive, well, not a brand new hard drive, one that I'm using. And for example, that's how I do my backups. I put a hot swappable drive into there, bolt it up, ting, it shows up, boing, it shows up as drive, D or E or whatever. I do my backup to that, and then I eject it just like you would eject like a CD-ROM, right? Or a floppy disk or any other thing, right? You plugged in a USB drive, you could hit the little eject button and safely remove button, and then eject the drive, and then I open it up and pull it out, right? Kind of cool. All right. So location. So page 253. So basically the server rooms are really designed for 2 things: power and cooling. Okay, that's really, really what you're after. I mean, sure, you need more than that. I mean, yeah, you need electrical power, you need fire suppression, you need good network connection, you need temperature and humidity controls, and of course, security. Physical security is kind of sort of easy. Don't put it on an outside wall with a window, right? So somebody just throw a brick through the window and, get inside your place. I will tell you, don't try to put this in a closet or something, I've seen people have a closet somewhere where you have the hot water heater or the buckets that the cleanup crew uses to mop the floors, that kind of stuff. Don't put it in a utility closet. It's too cramped. Those things are never designed for cooling. In fact, they probably don't have any air conditioning, venting at all inside that closet. If you do have a mechanical room kind of scenario where you have, hot water boiler over here and, and a heating fan unit over there, well, then you're probably going to use what's called a shop cage. Some, just a piece of, metal fabric that you could kind of break off a chunk of the room. That way you could have a separate lock on there so the janitor who comes in to do something or the maintenance guy who comes in to change the filters is not going to be tempted to, accidentally unplug something on the computer side. Okay. So, using cipher lock to get in, that used to be the thing. Now, video cipher locks is probably the best way. Have a video camera, like, just sort of the same thing like the, Ring doorbell kind of a thing, where you walk up and you type in your PIN number, but it's recording you as you do this. I basically have a recording of everyone who was granted access to the server room. Housekeeping. So, do you let the janitorial service into your server room to, sweep the floor and empty the trash? Probably shouldn't. Which means your IT folks are going to have to be neat. Neat? Are you kidding? Yeah. I mean, don't have any trash cans in there. Don't have anything, and you're going to have to kind of keep up, sweep and clean and vacuum and all that, probably on your own. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Rack mounting. So clearly a good server room would have 19-inch racks and not all crammed together. There's a specification. We have some other course that talks about this in a little bit more detail. But 3 feet from this and 4 feet from that, and how to set these guys up. And I will tell you, one of the craziest things you ought to do is, let's say you think you're going to need 3 racks, but go ahead and buy 4 and go ahead and bolt them to the floor. These things are not movable. And there's a sneaky reason for this that you're going to think I'm crazy, but trust me, I've done this for a living. I know what I'm talking about. And that is, if you have an empty spot on the floor, management, somebody is going to walk in one day and say, "Hey man, could we store the tables for the picnic over here?" And you're going to go, "Oh man." So, but if all the room was consumed by racks, well then they're not going to, "Oh man, we got some boxes of stuff. Can we store it here?" No, there's no room. Okay, so yeah, it sounds dumb, but don't have a blank spot on the floor because somebody will try to use it and you'll lose access. You'll lose the exclusive access to your server room. Okay, you're going to need uninterrupted power supplies. Yeah, you could have this at each rack. You could have every rack at the very bottom would probably be, a battery backup that powers that rack. That you could have that, or you could have an external one, a big monster thing. We had one that was huge. I mean, it was the size of like a car or more, that ran the entire room, and it was noisy. It was smelly. It was, oh man, it put out a lot of heat. Probably not smart. If we had to do this thing over again, I would have moved that part to a mechanical room someplace and not have it inside the room that it was serving. Live and learn. Okay. And then, of course, remote management. So inside your server room, you don't want to have people working inside the server room. First of all, it's going to be noisy. You probably have to have, hearing protection. So the best scenario would be like the first cube outside of the server room door would be like where the system administrators work. That would probably make sense. And they would log into their computer sitting at their desk and remotely connect to the servers and check out, see how things are doing. It also provides like a watchdog, so to speak. That, hey, what are you doing? Somebody walks up to the door. Hey, man, could you let me in the room? No, who are you? Somebody who actually knows what's going on. They're guarding the door. Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark.